What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here for another weekly episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, brought to you, of course, by 26shirts.com for all of your Buffalo sports apparel needs. Go to 26shirts.com. They always have a new design to celebrate this upcoming week's playoff game. I know Del Reed and the crew out at 26 Shirts, we bring in some great designs this upcoming week. Check those out. Of course, all proceeds go to charities locally within the area, and it's a great, great time to be joined by a great guest. Really happy to get him back on the podcast, Joe Kraus of WNY Athletics. Joe, thank you so much for joining me on the program tonight.
Hey, Ryan, good to see you again. Thanks again for having me. Great pleasure. You've done a great job since we last spoke. It's been about, I think, 2 years, but It's always great to talk to you. And thanks for having me once again.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Yeah, time flies in life, right? And time flies when you're having fun and when you're busy, right? We've both been very busy guys in this process here in the sports, entertainment, media, whatever you want to call it, spectrum. I want to definitely talk about what you and pardon me as I clicked the last week's show guest. As I look at, what you've been doing within WNY Athletics, I'd like to talk about that a little bit first. Last week I had Tom Prince on. We were sharing some witty banter, as I know you're able to do as well. But what would you say has been your favorite experience thus far working with WNY Athletics?
I would say, Ryan, just going to the different schools and broadcasting the different games. Just in the past, working football. Most recently, doing hockey games with Rich Crozier, the former coach at St. Joe's. Tom and I have done a bunch of basketball games. Ryan Gallo has been my color guy for a bunch of basketball games as well. You just never know what to expect in every game. And with every color commentary that I partnered with, it's a different style. Each color guy brings a different perspective, which is really interesting and really cool for me. Getting to talk with these different people and just interacting with the different players and coaches, whether it's in Niagara County, I know our collective backyard, or taking a trip to Hilbert College or Erie County. It's been really, really fun. And really excited. We got a big game tomorrow on the girls basketball side. Carter O'Hara against St. Mary's, two of the top girls programs in Western New York. The Lady Lancers looking for their first win against O'Hara in 5 years. But Kyla Hayes, top 10 all-time scorer with over 2,000 career points. So it should be really fun tomorrow. And it's just been great. It was a couple of years since I wasn't on the play-by-play side, and to just be able to come back and help Frank Wolf and everybody at West York Athletics provide these games. It's been a big blast to be back.
Yeah, and you're able to kind of get a good sense of the differences in the sports. I've done a little commentating myself. I've done a little boxing, MMA, a little bit of hockey. Hockey gives me a even greater appreciation for the late great Rick Jeanneret, right? Keeps you on your toes, very fast paced sport. You're looking at the sheet with the numbers on it, making sure that if 18's getting the puck, as soon as he's got the puck, you gotta call that name. You gotta call that name real quick, especially if they're moving up the ice or up the roller rink. I've done all sorts of stuff as far as hockey goes. So I definitely share your sentiments as far as the differences between commentating football. There's a bit more pauses. Hockey is very, very quick. Am I right?
Oh, definitely. And for hockey, it's also really nice. For most of the broadcasts, I'm partnered with a former coach. So with Coach Crow, he just joined us. Had a great career at St. Joe's, 15 years, 7 state titles, 310 wins. And with him on our broadcast for hockey, he's able to provide what he was seeing for those decades as a coach and to bring over to the viewers. And he does a really nice job explaining the the technicalities of the sport at home.
Sure.
Tom does a great job with that as well for football and basketball. But you said for hockey and football, there's the different styles. For football, I do the old-fashioned portfolio with the old manila folder, got the charts, the depth charts. I try to contact the coaches for any sport in advance early on to get the notes and who's the starters. But definitely football, each sport has a different pace. And when you go from one sport to the next, there's a little transition, but it's fun either way. Football, basketball, hockey, you name the sport. I'm all in. It's really fun.
Yeah, and it shows, not only are you all in, but it shows that you're willing to be a jack of all trades and maybe even put yourself in, dare I say, uncomfortable situations. Because coming into it for me, I was more, I guess, experienced in one sport over the other. But when you're willing to do everything, right, that's always good, and you've definitely been able to do that, so that's really awesome. I definitely wanted to acknowledge that at the beginning of the show, because what Frank and company, yourself, and of course Tom and Matt O'Rourke, who I'll be sure to have on the show in the coming weeks, it's brought a new level of eyeballs to high school sports. I'm actually looking to join the coaching ranks, whether it be high school wrestling or high school baseball, high school football, just kind of dabble in as much of it as I can. And, you're wearing different hats, and adding different hats, whether it's, color commentating for hockey or play-by-play for football. It's just two very, very different, skill sets that you have to, utilize and kind of hone in as you go through that. So definitely something that I know that, the people that tune into this show, they always say, broadcasting is your soiree, is your move. And I've done a lot of it, but I also like to hear what other people bring to the table and other tidbits to learn. And you're definitely one of those guys, man. You're doing a really good job. So shout out to you and much respect on that front to start the show.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Of course. So the people have spoken. They want a breakdown from Joe Kraus. They want a breakdown from Ryan Thomas as far as the Bills and Ravens, the AFC divisional round preview and prediction. Of course, this game is one that I just saw a stat, Joe, that really shocked me. I'm not too deep into the betting, aspect of sports, even though it's fully legalized, and you got DraftKings, you got Caesars, you got MGM, and all the betting sites that are out there. For the first time since 1970, the Buffalo Bills are a betting underdog at home in a playoff game by 1 point. They are now sitting as a 1-point underdog to the Baltimore Ravens. And starting off with that, the odds makers, they have a good grasp of what the game could bring. That's why I don't bet. I don't like to bet against them, because that's a fast track to losing some cash. What do you say in terms of not just the betting aspect, but just the narrative heading into this game, Bills and Ravens? How would you break it down? How do you look at this game, X's and O's wise, for the Buffalo Bills versus the Baltimore Ravens?
Well, I would say just a story. Just to go back for a moment, Ryan, to this past Sunday, the Bills and Broncos game. It kind of went how I was kind of predicting. I thought the Bills, like they have at times during the season, they tend to start slow offensively, and then by the second half, they heat up. And I feel like they can't afford to do that against Baltimore. And obviously, they played each other back a few months ago, about 3 months ago. 35-10 win for Baltimore. They weren't fully healthy, but now that everybody's fully back, I just feel like the offense has to have a quicker start. In that game against the Ravens, 5 of their first 6 drives were punts. They had the field goal in the drive number 2 from Tyler Bass, but other than that, the offense just took too long, and Baltimore cashed in. So I think that's going to be the main factor, is how, with everybody back in the fold and fully healthy, Amari Cooper is now in the lineup. James Cook is cooking, to say the least, in the backfield. Just how does the offense turn a little bit quicker with Joe Brady? And I think they will. I mean, they have to if they want to stay in this game, because You give the ball to Derrick Henry, 87-yard score to start the last meeting. They have to be able to respond quicker on offense.
For sure, for sure. Last week they did that, right? Last week they allowed an opening touchdown. It was a beautiful deep ball from Bo Nix to Troy Franklin, and then it was really all Buffalo Bills throughout. I mean, it was 31-7, down 7-3, 28 unanswered points. Josh Allen was finding anyone that was out there to catch a football. It seemed like everybody did eat, as they say. Everybody eats in that offense. Curtis Samuel, shout out to him. He made a big play, made a big move after a big catch on the sideline, kind of springboard off the right foot, left foot to go into the end zone. And to your point, Joe, I mean, last time the two teams that I think are the two best teams in the AFC. I know the seeding would tell us otherwise, but the Buffalo Bills and Ravens have been very, very dominant on both sides of the ball throughout this season. But Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Teron Johnson, they were all out in that Week 4 matchup. And I tend to think those three players, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and Teron Johnson, are huge keys to victory for the Buffalo Bills in this game in terms of lining up against the second best game breaker in this game, Lamar Jackson, a quarterback. What do you say in terms of how the Bills defense this time around, a healthier defense, how do they match up with the Ravens better this time than they did, let's just say, how many weeks ago? It's been 16 weeks ago.
Oh, definitely. I think since the Baltimore game, and you look at the long stretch since then, outside of that LA Rams game, the defense has just been stellar week to week. And I wrote down the three guys you just said: Milano, Bernard, and Johnson. And to me, Johnson has been, he's quiet under the radar, but he's been the most valuable player defensively.
Sure.
And you think about that secondary. I know DeMar Hamlin's had some good spurts. Jamarius Ingram has done well. Christian Benford has done well. But Taron Johnson, when he got shaken up and he had to leave for a while Sunday against Denver, that was kind of a moment like, that's the one guy you really can't afford, especially with Milano. He's back, but he's not the Matt Milano that we've all enjoyed for the past few years.
Sure.
But with those three back in the lineup in Baltimore, it's going to be a big test of how can they stop Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson especially. But 16 interceptions as a unit, 7 players with 2 picks each, averaging just over 2 sacks per game. This might be the best defense that Coach McDermott has had, Sean McDermott has had, with Bobby Babbitt taking on the responsibilities. But you just touched on, Ryan. Those three guys, those are the big keys, especially Taron Johnson in the secondary.
Yeah, and when he went down, I was holding my breath a little bit because they play nickel so much as a defense that it forces somebody else to step into that role, which is very specific in its own right, but it's specific to the skill set that Teron Johnson has. And with a guy like that out, it forces somebody to step up that is just not the same type of player as Teron Johnson. And that's no disrespect to, Jamarcus Ingram or whoever they might put in there to fill that role if Teron Johnson were to go down, heaven forbid. But it's just not – he's that elite. Teron Johnson is that elite at that role that is really hard to replace, right? So I agree with you 100%. I look at this game as a true old school football game, a team that runs the football really well in the Baltimore Ravens, but another team that runs the football really well as the Buffalo Bills with James Cook. You mentioned James Cook has been cooking. I think Josh Allen is going to get a lot of credit when the Buffalo Bills do very, very well, but I think looking back on this season, we look at the stats, we look at what James Cook has done as a running back this season. 15, 16 rushing touchdowns, ties O.J. Simpson's record for single-season touchdowns. How shocking when you look at those numbers, Joe, and see that James Cook has ran for that many touchdowns. I think that's the biggest shock, the biggest surprise of this season for the Buffalo Bills. What do you think of that?
Well, here's the other shocking part. Just looking at the numbers, James Cook is only averaging 13.5 carries per game. He's not even the focal point because Josh Allen, even when he doesn't want to run, he's able to move upfield. To me, for James Cook, when he was taken, I think it was 2-3 years ago, when he was taken by the Bills, I was thinking out of Georgia, I was thinking, man, that's going to be a steal when we look back 2-3 years. And look at what he's done. 1,000 yards this season. You mentioned he's tied OJ's record. Had a $120 in a score against Denver. And really just it's really the quality over the quantity with James Cook. And it just seems whenever he has his number called, he gets the right play from Joe Brady, and he's able to deliver. But I would agree. Outside of Josh Allen, I think James Cook, he's the number 2 most valuable guy in the offense, because when you have a running back, like take a look at what Philly's doing right now with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. When you have that running back to complement, support your quarterback, it just opens the playbook even more. And this might be, I want to get your take, Ryan, this might be the best running game the Bills have had in a while since McDermott, because I know people saying Darryl Singletary was the guy, but it wasn't that consistent as James Cook. This might be the best running game overall.
I think it's easily the best season of Allen's career. Number one, he knocked those turnovers down. He's not fumbling. He's not throwing picks. He's not forcing throws in general. I haven't really seen that overall, whether it's a turnover or not. He's not forcing anything. He's taken what the defense gives him. It's an old John Madden verbiage it's so cliche, but it's what the great quarterbacks do, like the Bradys, the Peyton Mannings, the Big Bens, even Aaron Rodgers, of course, who I think is getting a little too much hate on the season that the Jets have had. I thought statistically he actually did really well this last month, but that's another story for another day, whether he comes back or not to the Jets or to football in general. But Josh has had a great season. The run game has been firing on all cylinders. I'd go as far as to say that the running back room for the Buffalo Bills is one of the best in the NFL with James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson. What a clutch play he made against the Denver Broncos last week. Yeah. What were you thinking when you saw Ty Johnson catch that pass in the back of the end zone by his shoelace? He was in bounds.
Yeah, just taking a look at the first couple of times, I thought he was out, but just the acrobatic play that Ty Johnson made, which pretty much sealed the game at that point, like for Denver. Yep. And it was one of those lengthy drives. I think Buffalo had 4 drives of over 5 minutes in the game too against Denver. But with Johnson and Davis, just guys just making the most of their opportunities. These blue collar guys. And I would say I would agree, one of the top 5 definitely running back groups in the league right now.
Yeah, and then going into the season, talking on this podcast over the summer, we're in like the dog days of summer, May, June. I will say that there was a pre-Stephon Diggs trade feel with this team. They're going to run it back. They're going to try to do it again with the same guys. Diggs being a part of that at the time. And then once they decided to trade Stephon Diggs, the whole discussion nationally around the team changed drastically, in my opinion. They went from being, okay, we're going to run it back with the same group of guys, the same cast of characters, to, okay, they traded Diggs. Now what? Now they're going to go draft 2 receivers because they lost not only Diggs but Gabe Davis, but they didn't draft 2. They signed 1 and they drafted 1. They signed Curtis Samuel, drafted Keon Coleman. And man, I got to tell you, the one takeaway to your question that I have, Joe, is that I am thrilled with the wide receivers of the Buffalo Bills. They also added Amari Cooper, savvy vet. There's been some games where he's been hit or miss, but more so because of the lack of opportunity, because there's so many other guys that can catch passes in this offense. Mac Hollins is like a wide receiver 4, has been great in that role of just getting the ball 3-4 times a game, averaging like 15, 18 yards per catch. Khalil Shakir, I think he's one of the best slot receivers in the game, and one of the best yak wideouts, yards after catch wideouts in the game. How exciting for you? I know it's been exciting for me, but how exciting for you has it been to see the offense kind of evolve the way that it has, despite the naysayers going into the season? I mean, it felt like the Jets were getting picked to win this division. The Dolphins were getting picked to win this division. Buffalo clinched the division with 6 weeks left in the season, and Josh Allen's having an MVP caliber season.
Well, I think you just said the word. The offense has certainly evolved.
Hmm.
We just mentioned about the running game. Since Joe Brady took over, there's been more of an emphasis on the running game, but
Sure.
with the receivers, um, it took a while for the new players to adjust, the Curtis Samuels to adjust. But even drafting Keon Coleman, it took him
Hmm.
some time to develop, and then he goes up and makes a one-handed grab against Seattle, and that was like, wow, like we have something there. And I think Amari Cooper, there was some flack on social media. Some games like he's making plays, some not, but that is what you want in a veteran receiver, right? The game
Hmm.
plan is on Amari Cooper, and if you're opposing defenses, you can only guard so many people at the same time, right? There's going to be
Right.
someone open, and that's what Amari has done. That's why it was interesting to watch him play in Cleveland because he was making those plays. But as you said, with the wide receiving core of Matt Collins, then you still have the two tight ends of Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. Dawson Knox had a big catch Sunday against
Hmm.
Denver to extend a late drive.
Hmm.
When you have those guys as well, it's a pretty talented group that Josh Allen has worked with, and you probably mentioned this on your podcast before. Um, with Stephon Diggs gone, there's probably not as much tension. I mean, Diggs was talented,
Hmm.
but it just seems there's more unity now in the
Sure.
locker room than ever before.
Right. I completely agree with you. Tension, can kind of distance guys apart, can kind of just create a feeling of angst and maybe trying to go for it a little too much in these playoff games and raising the temperature when it doesn't need to be at all in a very high pressure moment kind of created more pressure, I think, for a guy especially like Josh Allen, who just wants the guys to kind of rally around each other rather than kind of point fingers. You know what I mean? And it seemed like Diggs did that a time or two. I wish him nothing but the best. I appreciate the 4 years that he played here. He was probably the best receiver in Bills history over a 4 year stretch statistically.
Right.
I'd have to look at that, but he'd be pretty close with some of the numbers that he put up year to year. But he leaves and kind of bets on himself. And then the injury in Houston, he tears his
Mhm.
knee, and now he's 32, 33, going to be a free agent this upcoming March, more likely than not. So, just the way the ball bounced for him and the way the ball bounced for Buffalo, it kind of I think fate in football is a real thing, and I definitely agree with you, man. I love Dawson Knox. I think he's highly underrated. Dalton Kincaid is a specimen. He's a true phenom at the position. I think Brock Bowers, Kincaid, McBride, those are the three tight ends that I've been raving about coming out of college, and it just so happens that they're all very, very good at the pro level. I didn't anticipate it to be this good, especially in the case of Bowers without much of a quarterback, but they're all very, very talented. So going back to the Bills and Ravens, let's get kind of a score prediction. I know the folks at home tuning into this will want to hear your score prediction. How do you see the score kind of shaping up and shaking out for the Buffalo Bills and the Ravens? It's definitely going to be a close game, right?
Oh yeah, no doubt. I think it's going to be. I mean, like we said, this is a different Buffalo team that we saw 3 months ago. The
Hmm.
10 points was the fewest the Bills scored all season. They've clearly shown that they can do more. I think they're close to 30 points a game now this season as a whole. But I think my prediction is Bills going to be by 7. We'll say 31-24.
Hmm.
I think Baltimore, though, you really can't sleep on Derrick Henry or
Right.
Lamar Jackson. The MVP race, you can flip a coin, Jackson or Allen. Um, I think it's going to come down to, I don't know if the voting is finalized yet, but it could. There's probably a couple of voters waiting to see how this goes Sunday
Hmm.
before making their pick. But I guess it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, I think the Bills will win. We'll say 31-24. But as I was watching, because we prepared beforehand, watching the Minnesota game the other night, and Troy Aikman made a very good point how Minnesota just ran the table, won 9 or 10 straight, and then those 2 losses.
Hmm.
I kind of want to get your take on this, Ryan. If the Bills lose Sunday, how are we going to remember this season, right? They made strides. They won another AFC East divisional title, but was it all for naught? But again, my pick is Bills 31-24, but interesting to see.
Yeah, I love the questions you're asking me. It's like the interview within the interview. I love it. That's a very interesting question. I'll give my score prediction. I love the fact that you have it as a one-score game because I think it will be a one-score game, and I think whoever wins the turnover battle in this game will win the game. That is another facet. Buffalo's turnover margin, I think it's the best it's been in my lifetime. Like it's I think it's like plus 34 or 33, something crazy. It's astronomical. And you mentioned it. You look at it from that perspective, that just doesn't make sense. Those are numbers that do not compute. But then when you look at player to player, they got like 5 guys that have 2 picks on this offense. One of them being a defensive lineman. So it's been a fun year as far as the turnovers go. I think one turnover from Lamar Jackson could lead to victory for the Buffalo Bills. It's supposed to be 8 degrees at a high with a wind chill that'll put it probably around 0. And it's going to be a physical game, and that does benefit the Ravens in terms of what they want to do offensively. But I think it benefits Buffalo as well in terms of what they want to do offensively too. So this could be a cold weather shootout that we haven't seen in quite some time because Josh Allen can throw it in rain, sleet, or snow. Lamar Jackson can run it in rain, sleet, or snow. I don't know if he can throw it though. That's the key. Can Lamar Jackson embrace the Buffalo winds and play at a high level in this type of weather? I've never seen it. We've never actually had the chance to see him in the elements, playing in a game like this at this high of a level before. And I think the resumes, in my opinion, what sets Allen apart as a player is his resume in the playoffs versus Lamar's. Lamar is, I think he has 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in 6 games. So bad omen, right? The bad omen numbers, right? The 666. I think Buffalo's defense is definitely going to be ready, healthy, and I think it's going to be a shootout. I'm actually going to go 38-35 for the Buffalo Bills getting it done, and they might have to call on their kicker Tyler Bass to put one through the uprights with the wind to his back. So or in his face. So it's gonna be a great game, a classic. And to kind of piggyback off of that score prediction, we both got the Bills winning, by the way, for the folks at home tuning in. But if the Bills lose this game, I think out of all their seasons, these last few losing in the divisional round, I would be most hurt to see this team go down early in the divisional round because of what we've talked about. It's been such an unprecedented year, despite all the naysayers saying, "Oh, their offense is going to be so different without Diggs." They still show up. They still win the AFC East. They win 13 games. They would have won 14 if they needed to take Week 18 seriously. I think they almost won it with their backups. You know what I mean? So it just goes to show you how talented this team actually is and how deep it is. But Sean McDermott's got to get it done. I mean, if they lose this game, I think you will start to hear rumblings, not about McDermott's job or anything like that, but people will be really, really upset. And they have a right to, because this team is far too good to come up short in the divisional round once again. In my opinion, I think they're a much better team than Baltimore.
Even comparing the 13-second game against Kansas City and that team, I think this team is more talented.
Yeah.
Even if they get past Kansas City in that game, I didn't see that team making it that far that year with
right.
the talent. I think it was too much of Josh Allen trying to play some hero ball compared to now where he has the guys around him. And I agree. I don't think McDermott's going to be on the hot seat. I think there was a take a couple weeks ago of McDermott getting criticized and saying that he should be let go. And it's like, well, why don't you go back to the 17-year drought, right? When we went through the Rex Ryans and the Chan Galeys and the Dick Durans, but he has to get the stud. I'm sure that it's not being talked about in the locker room, of course, but they probably all know that all the eyeballs are going to be on Orchard Park on Sunday, and they
Sure.
have to get it done. But it's going to be a great game.
It will be. And one statistic that I urge Buffalo Bills fans, I'm gonna tell it, but they might not be as much of a football, nerd as I am, or as you might be, or as Tom might be, or all of the guys and gals that I have on the show. But you go back and you look at all the fans, critiquing Sean McDermott, and I've done it. I've said that there's moments where in clutch situations, I think he does sometimes unravel or freeze. I will say that, and I hope, we haven't really seen it much this season, but when we have, it's caused the Bills to come up short, and it's been so few and far between. I think Sean McDermott has every right to feel as confident as he possibly can. He's won a lot of games in this league, and that thought kind of enters into my head, and then I go and I look up Sean McDermott's win-loss record. He's got 86 wins as a head coach in this league. He's 50 years old. Marv Levy coached into his mid-70s, and he's got 112. He's only, I'd say like X amount of wins away, doing the math, which is like a couple seasons away from 3-4 seasons away on average to his win total from passing Marv Levy in wins for Bills history. I mean, that is something that matters. I think that shows you how great of a coach he is, because Marv Levy is one of the best coaches of his era. He's definitely the best head coach in Bills history. So to know that Sean McDermott's really only a couple years away from that, and he's only 50, that shows you that he's got a long career ahead of him as a head coach. And I hope he can get it done here in Buffalo. I think he's a great guy, definitely a family man, really brought this team together at a time where the team was not a team. They were kind of looked at as an afterthought. Going through the DeMar Hamlin situation, this guy's been through a lot as a head coach, and I'd really love to see it done this year. I think this year, to your point, it would be kind of the lead up to it would be so worth the wait. And you go, back prior to Sean McDermott, but even the Sean McDermott era, everything that's kind of led up to this has been for this moment. And that's what makes this game so special. I'm really excited for this one. Like this has the potential to be one that changes the way people look at Sean McDermott, the way people critique Josh Allen. I don't know why. Why do you think, for the folks at home that are tuning into this, that hear and see the hate and critique that Josh Allen gets, why do you think fans that might not be Bills fans, obviously, why do you think they critique Josh Allen so unjustly in comparison to like a Joe Burrow or a Lamar? It seems like Josh Allen is kind of the outlier to the elite.
It might. I think Josh Allen's he's been a top 5 quarterback for the last 3-4 years, no doubt about it.
For sure.
I think it some criticism I see is his play. But it could also be, again, you mentioned about Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. It's about the same market size as Buffalo, but unfortunately there's that national narrative about Buffalo that I think maybe is that. I think his style of play, it took him some time. It took him the first year, definitely by the midway point of, I'd say year 2, for him to make his first strides. But the early criticism was that he was doing too much, but he didn't have enough around him. Now I think the criticism is just, some people just need someone to hate on, right? We had Tom Brady for all those years. For some teams, Buffalo is the new New England Patriots. Like, you want to take down the Buffalo Bills. And I think that's my reason why I think Josh Allen has still had some of that hate. But I mean, he has answered the call every single time that he's been asked to, no doubt about it.
Yeah, straight out of Wyoming, no scholarship offers coming out of high school. Yep. JUCO kid gets a scholarship offer, goes to Wyoming. They're the only school that offers him anything. And he made the most of his situation, parlayed that into being a top 10 pick in the league, and he's been a franchise quarterback since the day he put on a Buffalo Bills helmet and trotted out onto the field. So I have a real hard time, and maybe it's because I'm a Bills fan. Maybe there's a little bias. Maybe it's because I got the poster, the canvas of Josh Allen behind me. I can't look at any point of his entire career and say, how do you not respect that? It just blows my mind. And you can equally respect every single quarterback that's out there, whether it's Allen, whether it's Burrow, whether it's Lamar, whether it's Mahomes. I think if the fans came together, it'd be a great unifying moment for the country that tunes into football. If everybody just said, we're in an era right now where there's four very, very good quarterbacks, four very unique quarterbacks that can play at an extremely high level at on every given or any given moment. They can take over a game. That is magical. I think that is something that would really help the social media debates. Let's just agree that they're all very, very good. Can we do that, Joe? Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm all for the unity. But I think you got to throw in a couple others too. I mean, Jalen Hurts is still doing well.
Yeah, sure.
Jaden Daniels has just come out of nowhere for Washington. Just him and Dan Quinn. I know we'll break down the other games in a moment, but yeah, this is a really good era for quarterbacks. I know I'm missing a couple others, but those four that you mentioned for sure. It's just any given day, just which team is going to produce better. But this is hopefully, I'm all in for the unity, man, no doubt.
Me too. And you could go on and on. You get CJ Stroud. I know Justin Herbert laid an egg in the playoffs, but he's pretty good. He's got the stuff. I think they'll come back. They'll turn it around. And the guy that we played last week, shout out to him. Bo Nix, his rookie year, starts in a playoff game. Good for him. You know what I mean? Good for him. It's good for the game. It's fun. Even guys like Bryce Young, who were looked at as busts, and he gets another shot to start, and he was a world beater towards the end of the year. I think the league's in a great spot as far as the quarterback play. Could be as good as it's ever been. And that says a lot when we're talking about the history of the game. So great stuff. For the record, Joe Kraus, WNY Athletics, he's got the Buffalo Bills winning. I have the Buffalo Bills winning. So now we're going to go into the before-mentioned NFL playoff pick'em. So we got Baltimore and Buffalo. We're picking Buffalo. Houston versus KC. Now, this is a very different time for the Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion. I feel like they're a little bit more vulnerable this season than what they have been in previous years. Mahomes has not really had the best season statistically. What do you think of how do the Texans have a chance, Joe? Do we have a chance to see the Texans beat the Kansas City Chiefs? What do you say to that?
I mean, I think there's a chance. I mean, to quote Jim Carrey, so you're saying there's a chance. I think CJ Stroud, he's had his bumps in the road for year two. I think his game against Buffalo is one of the best he had all season, and he kind of quieted off. I think Joe Mixon is kind of the catalyst in the backfield, though, for Houston. Can they get him to run the ball against this Kansas City defense? We mentioned about Stephon Diggs that he is going to be out, but there's a couple other big receivers that Stroud can rely upon. I think Houston has a chance. I think for Kansas City, a couple of years ago there was a debate like, is this the end of the Andy Reid Kansas City Chiefs, and they won another Super Bowl. This was about 2-3 years ago. I think this is probably another solid Kansas City team, but I think the Chiefs are going to win, but I don't think it's going to be the blowout that everybody's predicting. There are a lot of question marks for Kansas City.
Yeah, and to that, if this game goes the way that you just kind of broke down, where it's a little bit of a limper, I call it, when a team kind of is supposed to beat up on a team and they can't, they kind of limp to victory. What do you think the narrative will be for KC the following week? I think it'll be a much different one if they end up playing Buffalo or Baltimore in the AFC title game and they barely get by Houston. I think that'll really change the way people look. And that kind of goes to my point earlier, Joe, that I really do believe it. And I'm not saying this, in a biased way, but I think that Buffalo and Baltimore are the two best teams in the AFC this year. I really do. I know seeding, is what it is, but KC won a lot of one-score games or less than one-score games this season, and that's what good teams do. They find a way to win, but I just feel like KC is just starting to run out of gas a little bit, and maybe the deep Super Bowl runs could be catching up.
Definitely. I think, with guys like Travis Kelce, he's getting a little bit older. He's still effective,
Right.
but you don't know what his window is. Some of the different players that have been mixed in and out of the offense from years past aren't there anymore. But you said it, Buffalo, Baltimore. That's why they're the 6:30 CBS primetime game this week.
Yeah.
That in an alternate world, that would probably be your AFC Championship game. But Kansas City, as you touched on, they're still, you can't sleep on them. The defense still has some big players as well. But you said Kansas City. It'll be interesting to see what the litmus test will be, how they do against Houston this week, what it'll be moving forward too.
For sure. On to the next one, Detroit versus Washington. Of course, Detroit is hosting Washington. They have been one of the best teams. I would dare to say that they might be the most complete team in football. I think that could be thrown out there. I know they dropped one to Buffalo. I was very happy about that, but it seems like the Detroit Lions are a freight train that are really tough to stop. And even in that game against the Bills, it was 48-42. Buffalo came out of it exhausted, I think, coming off of the Rams game, having to run a marathon against a lion or the Lions rather than a Ram was a lot tougher. What do you think of Dan Campbell and the job that he has done in Detroit? And how do you think this game between the Lions and the Washington Commanders will shape up and shake out?
Well, for your first point, I have loved what Dan Campbell has done. There was a clip from Hard Knocks that circulated from time to time from his first year, and he's just like, guys, like, I know this plan is going to work. You just gotta believe me, believe in me. And then it fast forwards to, I think it was a couple weeks ago, they won the division title, and I just love what Dan Campbell has done. Just the offense in the defense. What Jared Goff, talk about a complete renaissance of his career. There are a lot of doubts when he was in LA, and then he comes to Detroit, taking over from Matt Stafford. It's just turned out this offense. The rookie running back as well has had a heck of a season too. But with Detroit, they've really embraced the Motor City mentality once again that hasn't been there for a couple of decades. And my prediction is going to be Detroit in this one. But you got to look at what Washington has done with Dan Quinn, year one at the helm, first year GM, second year owner, and Jay Daniels as the quarterback. That game, the back and forth Washington and Chicago, that game-winning touchdown, that was a moment where I said, "Oh man, like, this Daniels kid is going to be special." And then just last week against Tampa Bay, leading them down for the game-winning drive too. Daniels would be my pick for Rookie of the Year, but I think Detroit's defense is just too nasty to keep the Commanders' season going.
Yeah, and to sidebar the Jaden Daniels, you'll get a kick out of this. So every year we have we started, my friends and I, we started a dynasty football league. So 2021 was the first draft. I won the lottery, so to speak. So I won the lottery, which means I won the first pick for the NHL fans out there. We did a draft lottery where we, randomly grabbed numbers. I had number 11, which meant that I won the first pick. Like, the most ones that you picked, starting numbers with one, you won the first pick. And I drew the lucky number 11. In this case, I took Josh Allen. Surprise, surprise. But as the years have gone on, year to year, I had a buddy of mine that was in position to take a rookie quarterback, and he was saying, "I really hope Caleb Williams is available." I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "I think he's going to be pretty good, right? He's supposed to be the first overall pick." So just because he's the first quarterback taken doesn't mean he's the best. And he said, what do you mean? I was like, look up Jaden Daniels. Go watch a video. We were on the phone, actually, talking on the phone. He's like, what should I, what should I do? Read about him? Or so I said, look up Jaden Daniels, watch Arizona State, anything. Arizona State, anything the last 3-4 years, I'll send it to you. So I send him some stuff, and he's like, oh my gosh, I really hope that the guy that picks ahead of him, that picked 4, takes Caleb Williams, and then he was picking at 6. The team that was picking 5th didn't need a quarterback, so he was going running back or receiver. Just so happens the guy that's picking 4th picks Caleb Williams. I sent to him, go get your guy. Go get Jaden Daniels. And I told him to take Jaden Daniels. This kid I think he is, ceiling-wise, he has the potential to be better. And this is a hot take, but ceiling-wise, he has the potential to be better than Lamar Jackson. I really believe that. He's got every attribute that you would want. He's tough. He's nasty. He's got that chip on his shoulder. He can run. He can throw. I've seen this guy throw some deep balls even this season to Scary Terry that just make me say a rookie should not be throwing these passes. This guy's not a rookie. He's beyond what I thought he would be even. So to your point, Jaden Daniels is for real, and Jaden Daniels could play spoiler. Don't get me wrong, this could be a game where a spoiler could happen, but I agree with you. I think Detroit is far too much, too soon, maybe too much too soon for the Washington Commanders. But shout out to Dan Quinn and company. They've had a great year. Cliff Kingsbury, he could be on his way out. He might end up getting a head coaching job with the job that he's done with Jaden Daniels. He's done a phenomenal job. So, a lot to really like about Washington, but I definitely have Detroit winning that one as well. So the last game of this divisional round is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the LA Rams. And I almost made a joke. I almost said they are now the adopted. What a class move by the Arizona Cardinals, by the way, to kind of adopt the LA Rams for a week with all the stuff going on in California with the wildfires and stuff. What did you think of the Rams? You touched on the Rams' performance with the Minnesota Vikings this past week, Monday, actually, this past Monday night. What did you think of their performance in that game, and how do you think the Rams can attack the Philadelphia Eagles, if at all? What do you think of this game?
Well, I guess I'll start my prediction. I think it's still going to be an Eagles win. But I think for the LA Rams, I mean, man, what a moment. That's why they love sports, right? They relocate to Arizona. They have less than 48 hours to prepare for this playoff game that was already with high emotion. And just to march down the field, score after score. They had 9 sacks, I believe, against Minnesota. And just the highs of that game. And I think that really gave them an extra motivation to perform on Monday. I think there's a lot to love about the Rams, though. Matt Stafford, he's been one of my favorite quarterbers since he came out of Georgia. Cooper Kupp has been a top wide receiver. He's getting a little bit older, but he still made a couple big plays to help seal it Monday night. But I just think there's something about Philly, and I know that there's that drama with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown going on right now. But Saquon Barkley, I thought that I understand why they didn't play him in the last week to break the Eric Dickerson rushing record. But man, what a bounce back for him getting out of New York and to be the running back that we all thought he was going to be coming out of the draft with the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to win, but I mean, the LA Rams, you never know. They could keep this momentum going. They're going to be motivated once again, of course, as the recovery is still going on in the Palisades. But I think it's still going to be the Eagles once again. I mean, Nick Sirianni, a Western New York guy, leading the charge. There's a lot to like about Philly too.
Definitely, there's a lot to like about both of these teams. I'm a semi fan of what both of these teams have done in previous seasons. The Rams, Super Bowl champs. Philly, right there. That was definitely a Super Bowl that they should have won against KC, but they won one with Doug Peterson and Nick Foles against the Patriots, which was a great Super Bowl for any Bills fan that didn't want to see Tom Brady get another one. But all jokes aside, I actually am most excited outside of Baltimore and Buffalo. I'm actually most excited for this game, Joe. I think this game is going to be a great game between two teams that have great offenses. I think Sean McVay is one of the best offensive play callers, play designer that is out there. Outside of Andy Reid, I would say Sean McVay is a savant, to say the least, offensively. Watching Cooper Kupp, go down, I thought, man, their season would be over last year. Puka Nacua comes out of nowhere. Yep. And now you got both of those guys relatively healthy. I know they're, no one's really healthy at this point. They're healthy enough to play in a playoff game, of course, but Puka Nacua is special. He's a special, special player. So a little part of me, I still have a little bit of St. Louis Rams fanhood from when I was a kid, rooting for Kurt Warner, Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk, those guys, Isaac Bruce as well. So I'm gonna go with the Rams. I'm gonna root for the Rams in this one. I love Philly. I love the city. Been out there a few times for some games myself, baseball wise, with some friends. Got some friends that live out there. Still be tuning in and they'll be rolling their eyes at me at this pick. But I'm gonna go Rams for this one. I'm gonna change it up. I think that the Rams could get it done, which would set up a Stafford versus Goff NFC championship. Does not get much better than that in the NFC, in my opinion. That's just how I see it. What do you say to that?
Yeah, like I said, it's really a toss-up of who you want to pick in this one. I mean, man, Stafford, Goff again, going for another game with this magnitude. That'll be interesting to see too. I think this one's going to be. I know we picked our Bills prediction by 7. This one might be picked by 3, by a field goal down the stretch. But it's going to be an interesting weekend, that's for sure, for all the games.
Yeah, I think Bills one score, whether it's 3-7 for sure. Detroit, Washington, I could see Detroit winning that by 10, like, at minimum, 10. And then Houston, KC, could probably see the same thing, maybe 7-10, somewhere in that vicinity. And then the Rams and Philly could be by less than 3. I think that's going to be a really good game. Really pumped for that one. All right, so we got our playoff picks. We broke down the Bills and the Ravens, and we got the game of all games on Monday night. It is the national championship, the Ohio State versus the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Finally, the national championship is going to be had with Notre Dame battling or fighting for it. I've been really excited all week long. My adrenaline has been pumping. I didn't sleep much after the Irish took down Penn State by a field goal. I was holding my breath, thought, man, please, it's been a long time since Notre Dame has been in a national championship. So, Joe, I know that you're a big football guy, which means college as well as pro. It has to. If you're a big football guy, you got to be a college football fan too. What do you think of this game in terms of this being a great game for college football? I feel like this is the first college football championship in a while that the playoff really made a great matchup between two teams that are very evenly matched. What do you say to that?
Well, I think this is going to be an interesting finish between Ohio State and Notre Dame. There were, I had my concerns about the 12-team playoff going in. I think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
I think what I loved about the playoff were the matchups such as Texas, Arizona State. I mean, you think about it, Arizona State was a player or two away from knocking off Texas.
Yeah.
But you said compared to years past where you could kind of predict how it was going to go, at least one SEC team, and I'm not anti-SEC at all, but the Georgias, the Alabamas, it was the same type of teams, right?
Yeah.
And then you do the 12-team playoff, and Ohio State and Notre Dame, they were always in it. They're always in the hunt, especially in preseason talks over the last couple of years, and now this could be an interesting game. Neither team has won a national title since 2014, so my junior year of high school. It's been a long time. But I think it's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, you said at the top who you're picking for this one, but I think it's going to be Ohio State by 7. I'm going to say 38-31. The Buckeyes defense, I really love what Leonard has done at quarterback for the Irish, but Jack Sawyer, when was the last time you saw a defensive lineman run down with a touchdown? That was like James Harrison-esque.
It was. It was.
But it's a good game. It's good for college football to bring these rivalries, and I think the ratings are going to be through the roof too.
Oh, for sure. And that kind of goes to my point. I just feel like the way the playoff went made a matchup that college football really needed. I feel like these last few years, with all respect due to Nick Saban and what he did at Alabama, I felt like it got a little stale. It was the same teams, the same SEC. We're not SEC haters, folks. We just want to see some different teams in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
The dynasties ran a little too long, I think, and it wasn't for lack of trying, right, to the competition for the competition's sake. But I really think this 12-team playoff kind of opened things up a little bit more, rather than an 8-team or a 4-team or whatever it may be, and it led to this matchup being more of a organic, hard-fought matchup between two teams that you mentioned. Ohio State's defense, I think that is the best defense in the country. Notre Dame's offense, dare I say it, has overachieved a little bit beyond expectations. I think Riley Leonard has done a real good job, as you mentioned, but I think a lot, and this is a very unique thought that I had kind of just pop into my head when I was looking at Notre Dame after, the box scores and all that stuff after they beat Penn State. But an announcer said it, a commentator said that Notre Dame, it was at halftime, it was 10-3. And he said something to the tune of, it might have been McElroy. He said something to the tune of, Notre Dame doesn't have an elite offensive weapon that scares you. And I thought to myself, well, that's not true. They got a lot of good ones. They got a lot of good weapons. They might not have a wide receiver, quasi wide receiver one. But then I thought, hey, looking at the pros, you can say the same thing about the Buffalo Bills. So you have a quarterback that extends plays. You have a running back that can run in between the tackles and catch passes out of the backfield, that has a nose for the end zone. You have an offense that is skill position wise, wide receiver wise, it's good, not great, but everybody complements one another really well. The defense is stingy. They're not elite, but they're bend but don't break. Sounds a lot like the Buffalo Bills. Am I crazy that the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are much like my favorite pro football team, the Buffalo Bills? Am I losing my mind?
That's an interesting analogy to have the Fighting Irish as the Bills, two national products, head to head. You just made a good point about the defense. Thinking about Xavier Watts, Howard Cross the third, two guys that came back for this season. In Notre Dame, you mentioned about the offense, especially they don't have like Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith just coming out of nowhere,
right?
The freshman, they don't have that, but they have a good core to complement what Riley Leonard has done. I think it was the Penn State game. He made a couple big runs. Seems like every game he made those runs to just help ice the game. But Ohio State, they have those elite kind of guys, but Notre Dame, they're right there. They're in the game for a reason.
Right. And that second half kind of push too, like Buffalo, you mentioned from the top.
Yep.
Buffalo's a team that they start a little slow. They kind of download what the opponent is doing, and then the second half they could come out and look like a completely different team. That's exactly what Marcus Freeman has done with Notre Dame, especially last week. I watched their first half against Penn State. I actually subscribed to Fubo because I stream everything, and I said, I'm going to just watch this game. and I'm going to cancel it as soon as it's over because it's a free trial. So I'm like, all right, I'm in the clear. I don't have to pay $70 to watch one football game pretty much. So that's exactly what I did. But then halfway through the game, the first half, I said to myself, why did I even bother? Like they looked so bad in the first half. They looked like they didn't even really have, much energy. But then the second half, they came out and they were picking Penn State apart. Beautiful short passes, just over the middle, dinking and dunking their way down the field, running in between the tackles, fighting for extra yardage. Turnovers, obviously, Penn State's quarterback threw a very bad interception late in the game, but it reminded me a lot of the Buffalo Bills. It really did. It felt like I was watching a Bills game in some ways, and thought that was a pretty unique, sentiment. As soon as that commentator said they don't have an elite weapon, I thought, well, they got a lot of good ones. Greathouse is good. The running backs are good. Running backs are playing hurt, by the way, and they're still productive. So, I think it's a tall task. I really do. I would be a liar if I said Ohio State wasn't on paper the better team. But I think if Notre Dame forces Ohio State to play their game, I think Notre Dame can take it. And I think a lot of it has to do with coaching in this one. I trust Marcus Freeman more than the Ohio State coach. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Ryan Day. Is that right?
Ryan Day. Yeah.
Ryan Day. Yeah. I just, man, I there is not much to like on my end about Ryan Day. I know that he had the Lou Holtz beef. Lou Holtz made a comment about Ohio State, and he said, "Where's Lou Holtz? I wonder where Lou Holtz is." It's like, come on, guy. Let's focus on the now. Let's focus on Marcus Freeman, Riley Leonard. If I was an Ohio State fan, I'd feel like he was a coach that got a little too distracted by the naysayers and should just focus on the team. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, also to Ohio State on the coaching staff, Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes, former UCLA coach. He's done a good job. But man, I mean, just looking at Notre Dame from afar the past couple of years, what Marcus Freeman has done, he has done a solid job with the Fighting Irish. I guess if you don't mind me asking you, just how would you evaluate how Marcus has done, and was Brian Kelly maybe hindering them to a degree?
Yeah, I made a joke to my dad. I said, because he knows, my grandfather was a diehard Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. My dad more so kind of just loves college football to see who translates to the pros, and I'm a little bit of both. I'm a hybrid of both.
Right.
But wow, I have to say, since the days of Joe Montana wearing a Notre Dame Fighting Irish jersey, the best thing to happen to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in my lifetime is Brian Kelly going to LSU. I really believe that, because I didn't feel like he was trending the program in the right direction. I felt like they needed somebody younger. They needed somebody that had an energy and somebody that they could actually get behind. And you watch one interview of Marcus Freeman, you come away saying, I like that guy. I don't know what it is about him, but I like him. And I think that he could be the guy. That's how I felt when they first hired him. He had really no accomplishments prior to that, and yet at that level, and he gets a big opportunity to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish head coaching position, which is no small pressure cooker. It's a big pressure cooker. It's a Dutch oven of pressure, coaching that team, and I feel like he's done it really, really well. So I think he's destined for the NFL. I don't know when. I know there's rumblings about Chicago trying to interview him, and the Saints trying to throw him an interview. A little bit of that, I think, is out of respect, but I also think he checks off boxes of the college ranks, the Rooney Rule. I want teams to interview coaches, not just to check the box off of the Rooney Rule, though. I feel that does happen, but I think with Marcus Freeman, it's a legitimate fact that he turned this program from the bottom to the top, and it could be all the way to the top. But regardless, I never thought Notre Dame would be in the national championship this year, especially when they lost to Northern Illinois, who UB beat. So it's kind of a very interesting, twist of fate.
And how about the UB Bulls, right? With Pete
Yeah.
Rumble, his first year, just going all the way to a bowl game, and
Yeah.
he's giving the bonus to his coaching staff after the big win. Yeah, good turnaround for UB too. But you mentioned the Northern Illinois game, then to factor it all the way to now. What a run for the Fighting Irish. I mean, it should be a solid. I'm still picking the Buckeyes, but it should be a big win.
Yeah, I think the smart pick would be with Ohio State. I will say I think, on paper they are the better team, but I think Notre Dame can get it done. It's just a question of a few things bouncing their way, much like they did against Penn State. Penn State had that game. They let it slip through their fingers, but I think Notre Dame has a way of forcing teams to make mistakes. And that's what they need to do against Ohio State. I think they can. I think I don't know, maybe I'm overanalyzing the Ryan Day interviews, but it seems like he is a coach that can easily be rattled over the smallest things. So my hope is that Notre Dame does just that. Of course. So, Joe, we had an action-packed show tonight. We gave our NFL playoff pick, our Bills-Ravens preview, score predictions, all the above. OSU versus Notre Dame. Any last words? Where can the folks find you that are tuning into this show? Where could they find you to get a little bit of Joe Kraus and the commentating booth?
Yeah, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at by Joe Kraus. I'll have updates, West York Athletics, play-by-play. I mentioned at the top, I'll have my next game tomorrow. Carter O'Hara, St. Mary's girls basketball. I'm also doing some work with Damon College, Ville Maria College, some writing as well.
Nice.
But follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at by Joe Kraus. And, sports, pop culture, music, it'll be a lot of fun. And big thanks to everybody who's followed me along for the last 15 years or so. It's been a great ride.
That's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that is fantastic. Now, you said music. I'm really putting you on the spot here, but who is the best band of all time?
The best band of all time? Depending on genre, but I would say overall probably the Eagles. Just seeing what they have done over a long time. They started in that country rock realm, and then obviously with Hotel California and New Kid in Town and all those big hits. But I would say the Eagles probably the best band, or to answer your question, the best band of all time. My pick would be the Eagles, but there's certainly like 10 others floating in my head right now too.
You got the Eagles, a little bit of Led Zeppelin, a little bit of Black Sabbath, the Beatles.
Leonard Skinner.
There's Leonard Skinner. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to that. We'll have to text on that front too. Joe, I really appreciate you hopping on the show tonight. It was great to break down the two biggest games of the week, the Bills, the Ravens, as well as OSU versus Notre Dame. Of course, 2 days in a row. We get Sunday night and then Monday night. I am going to be like a kid in a candy store. I know you will be too, watching those two games. Appreciate you hopping on the show, buddy.
Thanks, Ryan. Good to see you. Take care. Enjoy the games.
Yeah, you too. I'll chat with you soon. Keep in touch. We'll have you on much sooner than the last time. 2 years went by. We're way too fast.
Absolutely, man.
All right, part the show with a Go Bills. Let's hear it.
Go Bills.
Go Bills. All righty. That was Joe Kraus, of course, of WNY Athletics, right next to me here. And I am, of course, Ryan Thomas for the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I will see you guys next Wednesday with another guest, of course. Joe, I really wish you the best throughout this, broadcasting journey. If you ever need anything, let me know, of course, and, enjoy this upcoming slate of games that you got. And I know you'll enjoy the Super Bowl, hopefully, fingers crossed, with the Buffalo Bills in it.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Good talking with you.
Thank you. Take care, buddy.
See ya.
All right. That was Joe Kraus of WNY Athletics. Great to chat with Joe. I've always appreciated the work he's done I want to continue to have great guests on the show week in, week out for the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. It was easy to come up with a set list, so to speak, for this podcast because I had a lot to talk about as far as the playoffs, NFL-wise, BCS National Championship, my Notre Dame, fighting Irish. Boom. Let's beat Ohio State. Let's get it done and win our first championship since 1988. For that, I'm Ryan Thomas. Thomas Take is out.